The dust had not even settled behind Wade Holloway's horse when he pushed his way through the crowd and grabbed a slice of pie right off the table, without asking anyone's permission. Gasps rose from the small crowd gathered near the church steps. A woman covered her mouth. Two children stopped chewing mid-bite, staring at the rich man with wide eyes. An old farmer standing nearby let out a rough laugh and shook his head, muttering to his neighbor, "Look at him. Thinks gold buys manners too." Wade did not care. He had ridden 3 long hours under a burning sun, his black horse lathered with sweat, his own shirt sticking to his back. The smell of that pie had pulled him off his horse before his boots even touched the ground properly. Cinnamon, butter, something warm and sweet that made his stomach twist with hunger. He bit into the slice right there in front of everyone, crumbs falling onto his fine leather vest. His eyes closed. For one long moment, Wade Holloway, the richest man in the county, stood frozen in the middle of a dusty street, chewing slowly, like a man who had forgotten how good food could taste. The crowd watched him, unsure what to make of it. A rich man, eating pie like a starving ranch hand, right in the open, with dust still on his boots. "Well," the old farmer called out, half laughing, half mocking, "gonna pay for that slice, mister, or just take what you please like always?" Wade opened his eyes. He did not answer the joke. Instead, he looked down at the pie in his hand, then up at the crowd, his face full of something nobody expected from him. Wonder, real wonder, like a boy tasting sugar for the first time. "Who made this?" he asked, his voice loud enough for the whole street to hear. Nobody answered. He asked again, stepping closer to the table, ignoring the stares and the whispers. "I said, who made this pie? I have gold in my pocket, and I intend to find out who baked something this fine." Still silence. Children looked at their mothers. Mothers looked at their husbands. Husbands looked at their boots. The old farmer's laughter faded. His smile dropped. Something in the air had changed, though Wade could not yet understand what it was. He turned in a slow circle, pie still in his hand, searching every face in the crowd for an answer. But every single person looked away, like they were hiding something too heavy to say out loud, something buried deep beneath the dust and the silence of Red Hollow. Wade asked one more time, his voice sharper now, cutting through the hot afternoon air like a whip. "Who made this pie? I will not ask a 4th time." Still nobody answered. An old woman named Miss Tilly stepped forward slowly, her hands folded tight in front of her apron. She spoke soft and careful, like she was walking on thin ice over a frozen creek. "Mr. Holloway, sir, it doesn't matter who made it. Please, just enjoy your slice and be on your way." But Wade Holloway was not a man used to hearing, "It doesn't matter." His whole life, gold had opened doors and loosened tongues. He pulled a handful of coins from his pocket and held them up high, so the sun caught the shine of them. "I'll pay good money," Wade said, "for just one name. Surely somebody in this town knows who baked this pie." The coins glinted. A few eyes followed them, hungry and tired, but still nobody spoke. The children who had eaten the pie earlier stood quiet too, though their small faces told a different story. Something flickered behind their eyes, like they knew a secret too big for their mouths to hold. Wade's gaze fell on a little girl standing near the table. She wore a patched dress and her feet were bare and dusty. In her small hands, she held the very last piece of pie, guarding it like it was made of gold itself. Wade knelt down slowly, so he was eye level with her. "You know who made this, don't you, little one?" The girl looked around first, checking the faces of the grown-ups near her, like she needed permission to speak. Her eyes were careful, unsure. Finally, she whispered just loud enough for Wade to hear, "My mama says the widow makes it every week, but nobody ever thanks her." Wade's chest tightened. "The widow? What widow?" Before the girl could say another word, her mother rushed forward and scooped her up into her arms. "Come now, child," she said quickly, not meeting Wade's eyes. She hurried away down the dusty street, whispering something under her breath, like an apology meant for nobody in particular. Wade stood alone in the middle of the street, the half-eaten pie still warm in his hand. Dust swirled gently around his boots. The crowd slowly scattered too, each person finding some sudden reason to walk away, to look busy, to avoid his eyes. He turned in a slow circle again, watching the empty street, the closed doors, the quiet windows. Something heavy hung in the air of Red Hollow, something the whole town seemed to be hiding together, like a shared secret too shameful to speak out loud. And for the very first time in his rich, careless life, Wade Holloway felt something he could not buy his way out of. Curiosity mixed with unease, pulling him forward into the mystery of the silent town. Wade would not let it go. That evening, he walked from door to door, knocking on wood still warm from the day's sun, asking the same question over and over. The innkeeper looked away and mumbled something about supper needing tending. The blacksmith suddenly found urgent work with his hammer and iron. The preacher cleared his throat and spoke instead about the weather, about rain that might come soon, about anything except the pie. Wade stood on the dusty street, frustration building in his chest like a storm cloud. Finally, an old ranch hand named Cormac stepped out from behind the stable, his boots heavy with years of honest labor. He looked at Wade for a long moment, like he was deciding something important. "Come here, mister," Cormac said quietly, "behind the stable, where nobody else can hear us." Wade followed him into the shade, his heart beating fast with curiosity. "There's a woman," Cormac began, his voice low and careful, "named Agnes Renwick. She lives alone past the dry creek at the edge of town. Her husband died 3 winters back. He fought off outlaws trying to steal the whole town's grain that winter, saved everybody, but he died doing it." Wade's eyes widened. So this town honors her surely, for such a sacrifice. Cormac shook his head slowly, sadness heavy in his eyes. "That's the shameful part, mister. Folks were grateful for a season. They brought her food, said kind words. But seasons change fast around here. Soon, everybody got busy with their own troubles, their own hungry mouths to feed. Agnes got left behind, forgotten, with barely enough to survive the winter." "But the pie," Wade said, "where does the pie come in?" "Every single week," Cormac explained. "Agnes bakes pies from the last apples on a tree her husband planted before he died. She carries them into town herself, leaves them for the children, especially the ones who look hungriest. She never asks for a single coin, never asks for thanks. She just leaves the pie on the table and walks home quiet before anybody can properly see her face." Something strange stirred deep in Wade's chest, a feeling he had not felt in many long years. Shame, mixed together with wonder, twisting inside him like a rope pulled tight. "Why does nobody thank her?" Wade asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Cormac sighed, long and heavy, like a man carrying a burden too big for his shoulders. "Guilt, mister. It's easier to turn your face away from a kindness you don't deserve than to look straight at the person you failed. This whole town owes Agnes Renwick a debt of gratitude, but they're too ashamed to ever pay it." Wade turned his eyes toward the horizon, where the sun was sinking low, painting the sky orange and gold. Past the dry creek, a small house stood alone against that fading light. "Take me to her," Wade said, his voice steady now, full of purpose. "Right now." Cormac led Wade down the narrow path past the dry creek where the water barely trickled over smooth stones. A small house came into view, its fence leaning sideways, tired from years of wind and weather. Beside it stood a single apple tree, its branches heavy with golden fruit, glowing soft in the last light of evening. Agnes Renwick sat on her porch, bent over a torn dress, mending it by the flicker of a candle. She looked up, startled by footsteps, and quickly rose, brushing down her worn apron like she was ashamed to be caught sitting there. Wade removed his hat, something he had not done for another soul in many years. "Mrs. Renwick," he said, his voice gentle now, nothing like the loud, demanding voice from the street. I ate your apple pie today. It was the finest thing I have tasted in my whole life." Agnes blinked, confused by his kindness. "It was nothing, sir, just apples and flour." "No," Wade said firmly, shaking his head. "It was love. I could taste it in every bite. Love baked for children who needed kindness, given by a woman this whole town forgot to thank." Tears filled Agnes's tired eyes. Nobody had spoken such words to her in 3 long years. "My husband," she whispered, her voice trembling, "he always said kindness doesn't need an audience. So I kept baking, even when nobody remembered my name." Wade felt his chest tighten, heavy with sorrow and deep respect. "Well, Mrs. Renwick, I remember your name now, and I intend to make sure this whole town remembers it too." The next morning, Wade did something nobody in Red Hollow had ever seen him do before. He rode through the streets, calling every family toward the church steps. He stood before them all, hat held humbly in his hands. "This town," he announced, his voice strong and clear, "owes a debt to a brave man who died protecting our grain, and to his widow, who has fed our children every single week since, without a single word of thanks." The crowd grew silent, shame spreading across their faces like dust settling after a storm. "Today," Wade continued, "we pay that debt." He gave Agnes enough gold to fix her broken roof, to buy new dresses, to never fear hunger again. But more than gold, the town gave her something far greater. They gave her their thanks. Every family visited her small house that week, bringing flowers, bread, and words long overdue. From that day forward, every apple pie Agnes baked was met with grateful hands and warm hearts. The apple tree her husband planted grew taller with each passing year, its branches heavy with fruit and forgiveness. And Wade Holloway, the rich cowboy who once asked, "Who made this apple pie?" finally understood something gold could never buy. The richest thing a man could ever own was gratitude, given freely and given on time.